Or you. I did write a book because I found so many of my seniors were having questions, and maybe not the senior themselves, but their family. What do we do about mom's house or dad's house? They think they need to move, or people come to me saying, I really need to move, I need to do stuff to the house. And so it just goes on, and they really don't make the move. So I'm just gonna jump around through the book on some of the chapters and just kind of highlight a couple of things, and I'll tell you stories. And the screen will tell you the rest of it. So that's my easiest way to know. But in chapter 3, we do talk about changes in health. Things do change. Health or death of a loved one. So I'll just tell you on the next screen, a story about Mary. Mary moved from Nebraska to Tennessee to be near her children. Her husband had died, and she knew she needed to be closer to family, but yet she was struggling because all of her friends were in Nebraska. But yet, even though she would see her friends, everybody at the bank knew her by name, the grocery store knew her by name. But then she'd feel sad because they were talking to her and her husband's not there, and someone asked about her husband and didn't know he died. So it was constantly bringing up these problems socially for her. So she knew she'd have to start a whole new network, but she comes to be near her family. Her daughter had small children, and she couldn't handle all the noise. She said, oh, these little porcelain figures. So what do I do? Money was not an issue, so she moved to a condo, and so that was not a problem for her. So that was her solution. And on the next page, we have a man in Middleton that he lived in Memphis, and he downsized. He did all the right things. He moved from the big house with upstairs, downstairs to something on a single level that was on a busy street. And he was afraid he was going to get shot in Memphis. He said, I got to get out of town. I got to get to the country. So he moved to the country, he had 60 acres, and he loved it for about 2 years until his health started going down, and then it was too much. And then he got stung by a wasp. He's in the hospital because he's deathly allergic. Thankfully, a neighbor had driven by and saw that he was in trouble and took him to the hospital. Then he's like, okay, I gotta be closer to them. Hey, I've got to be closer to people I know. He doesn't have children nearby, but he does have friends back in Memphis. So he's coming back to Memphis. And he's going to go ahead and look at a community because he knows that's where he needs to be. So that is kind of that. And the next page, we'll talk about a man in Jackson, Tennessee. He's in his 80s. He is very involved in everything. He's still working. He dances, he goes to choir practice. He's just involved in everything going on. In fact, he knew he needed to sell his house, 100-year-old house. 3 stories, bedrooms in the middle, kitchen, everything he has to go up and downstairs. So that's kept him very active, and it's been good for him. But he has a condition that's going to continue to get worse. And he does have a long-term care policy. So he needs to go somewhere where he can utilize that. And his family's in Memphis. So he's coming back. I think I covered most of that. You jump in anytime on this.
He's going to perfect one.
Yeah, he's going to perfect one. There's something I want to say about him. So he'll have everything he needs there, all the way to staying in the nursing home. So
I just might add into this one here, he was a hoarder. He had no idea what to do with all this stuff. So she's helped him with other people like the Leannes of the world to help to get the stuff out, which he can move.
Actually, he came to me from an organizer that he met with, and he's all over the board. He thinks today he needs to auction, tomorrow he needs to list it with me, and then the next day he's talked to somebody else at his work and he needs to list. So we're dealing with that too. So there's at least an hour a day that we just calm him down and we go through the process. Other considerations when we're moving on the next one.
Yep.
So as people age, maybe they're still mentally good, but their eyesight's bad. They can't drive anymore. So we want to make sure that they're near a place where they can have transportation. A lot of our communities, like Daniel's at, they have transportation they can use. We need the Leanne to help them with the stressful move, because if she can come in, pack them up, set their new home up that looks like their existing home as much as possible, it's a lot less stressful for them. A lot of times we'll move, we'll just have them sit there and they'll tell her what I want to take. And the kids come in, like this man in Jackson, his children came in, drew a floor plan, they know what pieces of furniture is gonna go with them as well, so. On the legal and administrative considerations. A lot of times when they're coming to be near their family, they forget about updating their trust and their will and those type of things. And they change bank accounts because they go to a local bank in town. And they forget to add beneficiaries, and that's devastating when they pass away and families can't get into the accounts. So make sure, if you know someone that's moving, make sure you talk to their family about changing and updating all of those legal documents. I wanted to also mention here, we've been dealing with a lady this year that was divorced 30 years ago. They're actually only separated. They never did the legal side of things. Her husband just passed away. Was going through probate. She finds out she is the owner of the home, and it's very stressful for her to have to come in to this in her 80s and deal with taking care of his things in the house. So in our book and in our workbook, we really get people to start to plan ahead so that these surprises don't happen to them as much as possible. Also, when people move, they forget about old bank accounts and things. So I learned this the hard way when we were selling an estate for an uncle. He had gas dividends and things that were coming in. They didn't come in very often. The only thing I knew to find was what was in his mailbox, because he didn't do anything online. If the accounts didn't come in through the mailbox, so we actually went to the website, and you can do this for any state. I didn't put the government one up there, but there's one that covers everything. But just go look at it. You may even have money sitting there, but a lot of our elderly people will have bank accounts or dormant accounts, utility bills, or we had deposits, utility deposits. So that'll be their insurance. We sold out. I didn't know our warranty could cancel. And so we had money sitting there for that. We had money from our child in school. Didn't use all this money for meals. It was sitting there. So make sure you check that out, especially for people that are moving. And as people are also moving to a new state, or even if they're in this state and they don't have a vetted group of people, resource team to
Right.
work with, I would just like to point out that if they are working with a senior real estate specialist, a lot of times they will have a bigger team to work with than just a normal realtor. And they're going to have that team that works with the 55+ group as well. Not all of them do, because some of them just go get their 16 hours education, and that's just education. But those that really work in this field full time, and it's their business, they will have a great team already set up to help the families through all of this transition. In chapter 5, we talk about the right facility at the right time. I love it when someone comes to me and they say, can we go look at facilities? We're not ready, but we just want to have an idea. And you're not wasting their time. And a lot of times they'll do a group tour. We can get 2 or 3 people together. If you think you're wasting their time, we'll just wait and we'll do a group tour through together and everybody gets to see it. So they kind of have an idea. They can show it in their workbook that we have, that this is where I want to go if something happens. Because a lot of times they don't have, if they wait too long, they don't have any time. They've broken a hip, they're gonna have to go to rehab, and come out of rehab, they're gonna have to go there, and they're not going back home. So where do they want to go? If they wait that long, and they're not on a list somewhere, they're gonna go wherever there's an opening. They don't really have a choice. In the workbook, we also have just some checklists and questions to ask when you're going through and interviewing and that type of thing. Especially people who've had a spouse that's been diagnosed with some type of terminal disease. I really encourage them to start early if they don't want to live on their own after their spouse is gone. The other thing we are seeing, and I've had 2 cases this year, the 2 out of 5 year rule, where if you've lived in a home for 2 years out of the 5, you're exempt up to 500,000 on married, up to 250 on single taxpayers on capital gains. We had a lady She moved from Nashville to come here to be near her family, but she really waited too late to downsize from that big house to the single level house. She was only there 6 months when she had a stroke, and now she's got to move straight into assisted living. But she wasn't there 5 years, so there's no exemption on capital gains. We have another case where this couple has lived in their house since the sixties. They paid $27,000 for it. We're $750 now. But they're exempt up to $500,000. But one has got dementia. The other one is in okay health, but I don't know if he can live on his own when the spouse is gone. So if one of them dies, now they've only got a $250,000 exemption. I don't know how that works. That's a tax guide question. I don't know what happens if one of them passes away, but if they're single, that's $250.
I
So
can
it's
tell
just-
you that,
Good,
if it's the same year as the death, you still get both,
but if it's the next year, you do not,
correct?
right? So that's just things to consider, because if you were thinking you had $750,000 to, is that my timer? You thought you had $750,000 to pay for your care going forward, and you're gonna have to pay 20% in taxes. Right, 500 versus 250, if you were selling 750, it's just something to keep in mind as far as your planning going forward. And then on chapter 6, how are we doing on time?
About 8, 9 more minutes.
How much?
About 9 more minutes, I'm thinking.
Good, we're gonna fly through this, meeting ask questions. On the next chapter, paying the bills, who pays the bills? If you've gotten in touch with some of these great people, like, what's your partner's name?
Janelle.
Janelle. That's supplemental insurance in place, then maybe that will cover for that, help pay for that. Daniel with no resources to talk to as far as help and paying it. But I am seeing a lot is falling on the family. I have a lot of parents. I have a lot of children, grandchildren that are actually paying for the parents' care. And it puts a strain on everybody. On the next page, this is a very old slide. Well, I guess I'm jumping ahead here. Major health financial issues in chapter 7. This is when the family's involved in it, whether they're in a community or if they're still living at home, the family's still involved in this. This is one I have faced myself because my mom had a broken hip. She came out of the hospital, had to go to rehab, and I could not. I knew I could not get her to do the exercise in my home if I took her in my home. And my dad is blind and it's not well, so he can't care for her, so I had to put her in a facility. And I left there crying because it's horrible to leave them sitting there and you know you can't control what goes on at night or watch them 100% of the time. So you have that guilty feeling and you're dealing with all this. And then with the families often taking care of the financial side of it, this is the slide I said, it's really old. You see the dates on here, but it kind of explains, and the numbers have done nothing except get bigger. The sandwich generation is real, and I've seen it in our own family where parents have been there. They've had adult children at home, they've had small children at home, and they've had the grandparents in the home. Everybody's stressed. The kids aren't getting enough attention. The grandparents need more attention. And everybody's feeling guilty. What we're also seeing a lot of is the extra cost. We're seeing a family right now, because mom is there, the wife can't work, and she's always added to the income in the family. Now she can't, and it's just the financial strain on them is horrible. And a lot of times we're seeing that sandwich generation happen because the grandparents got into financial trouble themselves. We had one that invested their money and then failed and was everything they had. So all they had left was a pension from the wife who was a teacher, right? A small teacher pension. So they had to go with their family. They didn't have any choice and the kids didn't have another choice. And the kids had advised them about that investment. So the kids felt like they had to take them. So I just wanted to point this one out. Our elderly people are at the greatest risk for fraud. Partly because they have the money, the other parts, they're gullible and they will, listen to anything and feel sorry for them. And often this is that part, we have a friend Leroy, and that was the family's first sign that he actually had dementia and some mental problems. Is he was just giving his money away, the bank account was draining out. So if you can, if you're a child and you can be on the parent's bank account and kind of monitor that, that would be excellent. I don't know how to tell you to do it. That's a really touchy subject, but my parents thankfully have invited us to be in on that, and we're able to help and monitor that. The next one is off of our fraud presentation we're gonna do later today, but stealing vacant houses. This also is happening to our elderly people. And so I would recommend that if you know someone that's in the nursing home or they're in rehab, they're in the hospital, make sure somebody's stopping by, flipping lights on, shutting blinds, mowing the grass. Don't let it look occupied, because it's just an invitation, not only for somebody to steal their air conditioner outside, but to go ahead and just transfer the whole thing over, transfer the deed. One way we recommend, and I'll get to it later, I guess. I just want to mention on this, there's a lot of wholesalers out there that are legit. But before you deal with any wholesaler, I would recommend you talk to an agent and find out if they are. Make sure they're legit. Because you don't want to get your house tied up for months at a time with somebody with an open-ended contract that they're not gonna buy it ever. They're looking for someone to pay them a bunch of money.
We actually ran into that on the Jackson house. Wholesaler that told him, give them this big dollar amount, well, house is worth this, he was just trying to lock.
Can I ask a question here? I think I've seen, and I may be wrong, but where the big people buying houses by phone number, they just canvassing, hey, are you ready to sell your house? And they're paying for cash. Aren't they just kind of putting it out there and accepting rental application after rental application for months on end before actually renting it out?
They're not even doing that. That's not what they're doing. They are calling you, asking you, hey, are you ready to sell your home? I'm gonna give you 500,000. That house is only worth 50,000. But what he's doing is he's turning around. I've now got my partner, Jackie, and I'm gonna sell it to her. So instead of paying the 6% commission to the realtor, to the licensed realtor, I'm just selling it off because we deal with this every day. I'm selling that contract off. I just had a lady. Yeah. And buyer
We're gonna
can't
have to
sell,
have you do
and
a-
buyer can't buy because he doesn't have the money. So I'm just gonna sell my contract to Jackie. Jackie's agreed to sell. I've agreed with her, and we're gonna split 50,000 to $100,000.
It always amazes me how they're gonna say a commission, whatever the negotiated commission is, they're gonna save it. But yet that is this amount, and they actually sell it for this amount less than that.
Right.
So if we can just advise them, I don't have to have the listing, but if they will just call me and I get them what the comps are, so they know what they're looking at. So that's how it's done. The financial. On the fraud side, it happens with family too. We met a lady this year, her name is Jane. Her son lives with her and she's not gonna boot him out because he's disabled as well, but she's not capable. She really needs to go to an assisted living, but she's waiting for him to have surgery. Well, he's not mentally capable either, so he takes anybody that gives him affection, he loves them. So he invites them into the home. Well, her home was getting refinanced. Because this person living with her son knew he had access to everything in the house. He knew her social security numbers, he knew everything. And I can't say enough about having your team in place because that's what saved her. She had a financial person at her bank that knew her. He's like, I don't think she's refinancing her house. So he called and they stopped it. But we also, on that next screen, that was what I was saying, you should register your house. That way, if somebody is trying to steal your property by transferring the deed over, you'll get notified about it. You'll get notified if you refinance your house. You'll get notified if anything happens. I had a panic attack one day. I forgot we had refinanced and we paid off a mortgage and I got a notice. that was something happened with their heat on. Oh no, somebody's stealing my house. But it was all a good thing. You can also go to google.com alerts and put in your name, your property address, and that will notify you if anybody is renting a house, putting your house up for rent. So, on the next one, if you know of any elderly person, these are just contacts. If you need to, report anything as far as abuse or. And the next one.
Can you leave that up just for a second?
Let's see people taking pictures, yep.
Better idea.
Yeah.
This will be distributed to recording.
So let me add, I was amazed when I saw some elder abuse of family members. And we went to court and the court literally told them they couldn't take anybody. That they had to stop
Right.
collecting all
That's
these
huge.
fees and everything. And, you know, they were red-handed stealing $400,000 in real estate.
Right. Yeah, it's bad. Back on the fraud page where we talked about that financial thing with relatives, I also wanted to mention, 5 Wishes. 5 Wishes is a great program for somebody that does not have anything in place for their medical use. Living will, that type of thing, and it's not very expensive, so it's a great resource. But I wanted to put a warning out there as well. If someone has taken the time to put together a trust and they've sat with an attorney and they put all of that in place, be careful. And this is not fraud, it's not done intentionally. But a lot of our medical people will say, do you have this? Maybe they've forgotten, husband took care of it. Oh, I don't have that. When they sign that 5 Wishes or any other document like that, it voids what's inside the trust. It's going to create a question mark about the rest of the trust for that family that may be thinking this trust is all in place. So just be careful. Make sure if you're dealing with somebody, talk to the rest of the family, see if there's other documents in place that you need to look at first. My true identity. With Jane, if I had known her before, she didn't need to sell a house. She's never gonna buy another one. We could have locked her. We could have locked her credit totally. Nobody could have made a loan application for her. So that's just something you can do. You can always turn it off if you want to, but at least it'll keep them protected. We have identity protection through Allstate as well. Our credit's not locked. But every time something happens, I get this notice on my phone. You spent more money than you said, you know, because they give me an alert. If I have a check go out for more than $1,000, I want to know about it. And then I have to think. So that is all I have today.
Wow, what a.
So we talked about the book, and if you guys want an e-copy of the book, you're all welcome to it. I'm happy to share. We don't sell the books. They're free to the public because it's education we want to get out there. And our workbooks are free as well, but this one is the ebook, so if you want it, that should take you to my website, the page that's got that ebook on it. You may have to put your name and email in, because I want feedback. If you take my book, I want to know what you think about it. But that's all I have. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Does it happen often, somewhat often, that someone's going in for, like, let's say knee replacement, or they have this, pneumonia or something like that, and then things progressively get worse?
Yes,
And so they think, I'm just going in for this. I don't,
right.
tell us, I mean, does that happen? Is it often, or is it?
I'm
thing to
talking
be
to you,
concerned about?
I'm talking to you from a real estate perspective, so I know this little section.
Yes,
I'm not in the medical field.
right,
So out of
yeah.
all of Memphis, I have this little section of clients. But yes, we do have that. They call, sometimes people are going in for knee surgery and they'll go ahead and get ramps put in, or if they're gonna do hip surgery, whatever. The family's proactive and they do things up front to be ready for them to come home. But sometimes they're in the hospital, they get pneumonia, they get infections, and they don't ever.
Or they're in bed too long and then they come out not being able to walk.
We actually had one happen like that. Where he went in, while she's getting ready for him, she falls and breaks her wrist.
Right.
So it ended up having to go home.
Yeah.
So in that case, we came in, they couldn't afford it. We
Right.
came in, painted the house for them, put new carpets in for them, and got their house sold so they could get the money to move on.
Yeah, because they needed to do it
So,
right away, yeah.
so we ended up.
And I don't wanna imply that we've got deep pockets and we can do this for
No,
everybody.
no, yeah,
But in that case, they were in our church, we enlisted the whole church, we're like, we need to have a garage sale, who wants to come over and help?
yes,
So they had, that couple had planned everything out.
yes.
They knew exactly what they were gonna do. They were gonna move in with their daughter because they had always taken, every generation taken care of the next one. The daughter's like, yes, you can come. Well, when this happened, the daughter, no, the son-in-law was in the hospital with a knee replacement that would not heal, and he was on death's door. Well, the daughter couldn't take him.
Yeah,
So I was the one that went and looked for a facility for them to stay at.
right,
It was horrible.
yes.
I don't wanna make those decisions.
Right,
for
well, it's
family.
hard even for the family to make it, little
Right.
somebody.
She was on that one, she actually is the one that told the wife that you're gonna need to have them turn the pacemaker off.
Yeah, I became their best friend. I was their other
Right.
daughter, you know, when he went to the hospital, the last time he went to the hospital, I got that phone call. Sherry, you need to go to the hospital. They're going to, you know, from the facility.
Yeah,
You need to go. So I'm there and I know he has this pacemaker and I'm like, great. Pacemaker off.
right.
So he can go in peace and not keep getting shot. So, anyway, yeah.
One quick question.
Yeah.
About our capital gains.
Uh-huh.
Could they not have done a 1031 exchange?
Not on a personal home.
No.
That's investment.
I have a situation where I had a good friend. It was the single, and he did not take care of himself, and he did not have that much money. As far as social security and anything else. And he always just assumed that he was gonna move in with his sister or his niece. And never really talked to them about the possibility. And so he goes, he collapses. And you take him to the hospital. And he's not happy because we're finding all of this stuff wrong with him. Including like brain tumors and this kind of stuff. And his health was just terrible. And it ended up, like you said, he could not go back home and take care of himself. He was literally time bomb as far as his going or not. And his sister, who was really not his sister, it was an employee that he moved in with, and it was their daughter that they just became family. And so,
I see a lot of people live together.
Yeah,
At that
and,
cost.
and so she had to just really go crazy trying to find a place that would take him and that he wanted to do this, that, or the other, and there just wasn't the money to do it.
That's
But he-
understandable.
Well, I just want to say, did everybody enjoy this presentation?